George was a great mate of mine, and I think, as you say, George agreed with me. I thought that George Martin particularly didn't serve his guitar sound as well as it could have been done, but it was early days, you know, and they were doing those things. They made an album in a night, you know, and, you know, listen to Twist and Shout, and you can hear them barely being able to get there, but great records. I know, yeah, it's just purely a matter of the recording sound, nothing to do with George. He was a great friend of mine. In fact, I met, this is another one, I met his son, Dan, just 2-3 weeks ago in the islands. And there's Dan Harrison, who is the spitting image of George. And I mean, I kept calling him George. He says, no, this is Dan. I said, oh, shut up, you know, we'll get over that. Because he was so much like his dad. So, George, I mean, he was what a gentle soul. I mean, I used to call him Farmer George. He liked gardening more than anything. And, you know, another one, sorely missed. You know, I guess the good die young, huh?
So, what were your influences when you started playing?
I loved George Harrison. I used to learn all his solos and stuff. Like A Hard Day's Night, which was a really, very technically difficult for its time. It was quite fast for that sort of era. And the Run Down and Help, that was really hard to learn, where they go, will you please help me? And that was really, really hard to learn. It took me weeks to learn that. And then he went on the London Palladium and played it all wrong. And he told me years later that he only had one gretsch, and the roadie put the strings under the thing instead of over it. And so he couldn't play it properly. He was all out of tune and everything. And all the kids at school going, did you see the Beatles last night? They're crap. It was like really weird. And so, but it was great. He actually, when I got to know him years and years later, he told me that story.
Green.
Okay, most of the big Beatles hits were written by Lennon and McCartney, right? A massive songwriting team. John Lennon, Paul McCartney wrote these worldwide smashes. But there was another member of the band who was very quiet and shy, the youngest boy in the band, and he was called George Harrison. And he wrote this incredible song, which we would love to do for you now. And especially for Kerry, I think it's a good choice. 2, 3, 4.
It's been like 15 years since I disbanded ELO, and in that time, actually, I just had a year off and did nothing. And then George Harrison got in touch with me to help him work on his new album, which was to be called Cloud 9. And that was a fantastic opportunity for me, and I just walked in there and had a marvellous time producing and working with George. And it sort of snowballed from there. I went from there to doing Tom Petty, working with Tom Petty and Roy Orbison, and of course the Travelling Wilburys. And it all happened in like about a space of a couple of years. And so it was a marvellous way of becoming just a producer and a writer still. George Harrison's slide guitar playing is second to none. He's my favourite slide guitar player. He's got this touch, it's just like a velvet touch, and he plays it and it's so smooth and beautiful and soulful, and yet tuneful and melodic, and I've never heard anything quite as beautiful as how he can do it.
Went to Trident Studios. So I walked into the control room, and as I walked in, George was behind the console, and it's sort of like an apparition, you know, you see a Beatle, you know. And he goes, hello, Pete, you know, and I literally looked behind me, see if Pete Townsend walked in, you know. He said, and that day, he was producing his first record for somebody else, first album he'd produced for Apple. And it was Doris Troy, who had sung on Humble Pie as backups, and she wrote the song that the Hollies had a huge hit with called Stay. George said, do you want to play I said, yeah, yes, okay. And he hands me that red Les Paul, the storied Les Paul, and of course I had no idea what it was. He shows me the chords and we're starting to play a little bit, and I'm playing very quiet rhythm behind him, you know, and not wishing to stand out or overstep my bounds. And he stopped, he says, no, I play rhythm, you play lead. So I thought, oh, really? So that's when I ended up playing all the licks on this, which ended up being the single. He ended up playing a slide solo on it, but I had all the licks in it. Must have been only a few weeks later. He calls me up, you know, and it's weird picking the phone up and there's a Beatle on the other end, you know. Hello? Are you a Beatle? He said, I'm doing a solo album. I'd like you to come and play some acoustic with me. So we're sitting in front of the glass control room, there's Phil Spector in there, and the two of us are just between takes jamming, you know. Probably one of the highlights of my life. He was in the moment at that time, and every song that I heard for the first time, either recorded, stuff that was recorded before me, or the ones that he was showing us to record, it was all like jaw-dropping stuff. This is beautiful, you know, it's all beautiful stuff. You know, it was George's time to say, here I am, you know, finally, you know, which was wonderful.
And I can hear, for instance, people that are copying George.
The two of you go back a really long way.
A long way, back to the early 60s, yeah. In fact, I was with the Yardbirds when I first met George, and we were on the Beatles Christmas show. And we hit it off, and I love him very much. He's a great guy. Kind of a bit like an elder brother, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be hard to keep up friendships in this business, though. I mean, you move a lot, you work all over the place. And
Well, as time goes by, I mean, it's a bit like when you're at war, you know, you stick together, and it's like the old guys now, we do stick together because of all the competition, you know, and like, I find that I have more in common with people that have survived the 60s and the 70s, you know, we've got the same sort of attitude, you know, and every one of us really, like Elton and the Stones and George and all of the guys really, that much more mellow now.
George Harrison became a friend of mine. After Jeff passed away, we were having a tribute to him. It was an amazing tribute with so many legendary people that he had worked with and that were heroes of mine, also in many cases friends. And I went out to a club, and he was there, George Harrison was there, and I'm going, oh my Lord, this is the reason why I play guitar. He was in the VIP section. And I asked the bouncer, I said, and they let me in, I said, look, I don't want to bother the guy, I just want to shake his hand and say, thank you for everything, and I'll walk away. I'd worked with, you know, Paul, so that was why I said, tell him I worked with Paul, and not that would, I don't know, I didn't know how he would react. We might have said, like, you know. But he's like, no, come on over. And I met him, and I was, you know, really gracious. I said, I don't want to take any of your time. He goes, no, sit down, order a drink or something like that. At some point, he asked me to sit down. So, you know, I had a drink or two, and I loosened up a little bit, and I was, you know, I'd say, man, I don't want to be that guy, but I just want to say that I play music because of you, and you said the first thing that hit me hard was your soul, and I saw her standing there. I go, I must have wore that out just picking up the needle playing. There was just the sound, the way you played it, and that made him smile a little bit. And I said the solo on this, that, and I knew the ones that he did and the ones that he didn't. A lot of people go, I loved your solo on Taxman. He's like, oh, that was Paul, you know, or something like that, you know. So I knew the ones that he did and how much I knew all his solo stuff. I said we're having a special, you know, tribute to Jeff at the amphitheater in 2 days, you know, and the last song we play is A Little Help From My Friends, and we do kind of like the Joe Cocker version or whatever. If you got eyes and you want to pop in, sit in or something like that, I know this is like 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance, but I'd kill myself if I didn't ask. And he goes, well, I might show up, I'll leave a couple tickets at the back, and, you know, no pressure. And I just want to say it meant the world to me to meet you, you know. And I walked out, and I'm sitting at the piano back there, and we're kind of working out who's going to sing what on Little Help From My Friends, and I get it. Somebody's here to see. I go, really? This is a bad time. I was sitting with my guitar. Paige and Steve were all there playing piano. We're figuring out. He goes, no, somebody from Liverpool is here to see you. And I took a gasp, and I went, and I turned around, and there's George standing in the hall. He goes, Bet you didn't think I was going to show up. I said, no, I really.
Best times with George, we hitchhiked to a place in Wales called Harlech, and we were kids, before the Beatles. We'd heard a song, Men of Harlech, and saw it in the signpost. Yeah, it was a big castle, and we just went there. We had our guitars, took them everywhere, and we ended up in this cafe. You know, we'd try and go to a place, you know, a central meeting place, and in Harlech was a little cafe, and they had a jukebox. So this was home. So we sat around there, and we met a guy, and he started talking. He was into rock and roll, and, you know, we went and stayed at his house. So it was great, me and George top and tailing it in a bed. And he had a mother who was a kind of bed and breakfast. We didn't realize that. Years later, we realized we hadn't paid anyone. And now we were famous and rich, and she wrote to us. So we said, oh, sorry, you know, here with payment. But it was great, man, because we just had so many laughs, just like with these guys, these Welsh guys. One of them was John, the other one was Aneurin. It was a big Welsh guy who played bass, like, you know. And we sat in with their band one drunken night in a Welsh pub. It was funny, we had this room, and George and I were from, you know, an estate, which was, but our folks were like very hygienic. So it wasn't like dirty where we lived. And now we were in the country, Wales, and there were these spiders, daddy longlegs in the room, and we were, Claire, what? You know, the menace, the spiders. So me or George or both of us took a rolled up newspaper, got them, and went down to breakfast the next morning, and then we could sleep safely. We went down to breakfast the next morning, and the mum sort of said, how do you sleep? All right, you know. We said, yeah, fine, thanks, great, you know. She said, did you see Jimmy and Jemima? I said, pardon? 2 little spiders? No. No. Jimmy and who? Jimmy and Jemima. Oh, my God. Oh, so we had many a laugh over that one.